Directorate of Vocational Reviews, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, and you've seen the standards that they're hoping for you to work towards. So that's kind of what the regulated qualification structure is. And I think it was important to understand what a regulated qualification is, and then the structure to answer the question. If you could move on, Shaka. To answer the question, why do training institutes receive inspections? I really think it was important to understand what a regulated qualification is and what the structure is to answer the question that I was engaged to answer for you. And let's just look at some of the key points. The first one is, obviously, now we understand what a regulated qualification is and what the structure is. The first point is, Shaka, to protect the integrity and quality of the qualifications framework. Remember how we do that? Remember how the concept is arrived by the Sector Skills Council, the standard setting bodies sit down within the regulated framework, approved by Ofqual, registered and certificated through the awarding organization. Obviously, the liaison there is an EQA with your centre. So it's there to protect the integrity and quality of the qualification framework. Next point, Shaka. It's to ensure that the regulated requirements of the awarding organization that you're working with are fully met. Remember, we do that through the external quality assurer. Next point is to provide independent external quality assurance. So within your approved centre, you're responsible for your own internal quality assurance, but independent external quality assurance takes place to make sure that you're meeting the requirements of the organisation and you're adhering to the requirements of the regulated framework. And next point. It's also there to benchmark your centre activity against best practice. You know, not only is it there to inspect, and inspection or audit sometimes are strong words, but as I said before, your external quality assurer is there, yes, to quality assure and making sure that you're meeting the requirements, but is also there to support, guide and advise. So therefore, it's a good benchmark for you to say, nationally or internationally, how are you performing? Where do you benchmark? And if you look at the DVR, they have, don't they, outstanding, good, and other grades that they go through to tell you where you are within the kingdom, how you're profiling and benchmarking you against other institutes. So it's kind of a league table to let you know how well you are doing, how have you scored, but probably for me, the key question is, where are the areas that you choose or could improve upon? So to benchmark best practice. Next, please, Shaka. Is to enhance your quality management system. I'm sure those of you who haven't had inspections before have your own internal quality management system, but it's there to look at that. It's that focus on continuous improvement. We're doing well, okay, but how could we do better? What tweaks? Where do we need to focus? What things do we need to do to improve the level and quality of our quality management system? Why else is it there? Next one, please, Shaka. It's to raise the profile of your centre. I say very proudly, when I was working with an institute in the Kingdom of Bahrain, when it was before COVID, we received an outstanding grade, and very few institutes in the kingdom have an outstanding grade. And when we were under exceptional circumstances with the advent of COVID, we got a AAA rating. And I say that with great pride. And I won't mention the name of the training institute, as I said before, there's not many graded as outstanding within the kingdom, but it raises the profile of the centre. It tells people, your learners, key stakeholders, other government agencies within the kingdom, that the ability that you're able to perform to, the ability of the quality of your centre and your training institute. Okay, and next, please. So that's why it's inspecting. I thought it was important to me before answering the question, why do you receive an inspections? Understand what a regulated qualification is and understand that very tight structure that organizations fit within and your role within that as a training institute, as an approved center. Now, when you do get inspected, in whatever standard you're working to, standards can seem very convoluted. They can be very difficult to understand, to interpret, and they can be quite long. I mean, if you look at the DVR, there's, I think, the exceptional circumstance, there was about 32 different criteria that you had to meet to receive your grade. Now, just to make it simple for you, what they will look at is three key areas. They will look at your policies. Now, the policies very simply are what you have to do to meet the requirements of your awarding organization, of the regulated framework, and of Ofqual. So it's the policies, what you're going to do to ensure the quality of your organization. And then you move on to processes and procedures. Processes and procedures is how you're going to bring alive that policy. So the policy is the what, the processes and the procedures of how you're going to do it. A process is simply an end-to-end process. So it's a series of steps that you take. First, we do A, then we do B, then we do C. So the process is the steps that you take. The procedures is the detail, is the actions that you take to complete each relevant part of the process. So the policy is overarching. That's what we do to ensure that we're going to meet the requirements of our awarding organization and Ofqual, as I said before, to meet the requirements of the DVR within the Kingdom of Bahrain. The processes are the steps that we take, how we go about our business, and the procedures is the finite detail, the actual action that we take to achieve each step. People are important. You know, at the end of the day, you can have the best policies, processes, and procedures in the world, but if your people don't understand them and aren't driving them and maintaining them, then everything else falls down. So when you talk about people, you talk about qualified and competent people. Now, to deliver vocational qualifications or to deliver any qualifications, I believe that you need to be suitably qualified and experienced. Like I said before, I've been working in vocational qualifications for the best part of my working career for over 45 years. So I'm well qualified and I have a lot of experience. But another key thing that you need to think about is competence. I hold a large goods vehicle, a HGV, a big truck driving license, to give you an example of competence. So I'm qualified to drive a big truck, but I haven't driven a big truck for maybe 20 years. So I might be qualified, but I'm not competent. So when you're looking at your inspection from whoever it may be, from an international or national auditing or inspecting body, you need to make sure that you've got policies that meet the requirements. You've got a process in place, that end-to-end process, A, B, C, D, E. The procedures, the steps that you take to achieve each part of that process, and that you've got qualified, experienced, and competent people. And we call that triangulation. You know, one can't work without the other. Any auditing team will come in and triangulate that. Are the people following the policies? Do they know what the procedures are? Are the procedures fit for purpose? So you see how it all interlinks. So when you are preparing for your inspection, break it down to say, do I have the relevant and sufficient policies? Do my processes match those policies? Am I doing the right things at the right time, the procedures? And are my people qualified, experienced, and competent? Can we please move on, Chuck? So key questions I would be asking of myself if I was going to be inspected nationally or internationally. The first thing I would say to myself, is, first one, Shaka, please. Do you have contact with your relevant sector skills council? Now, a great way of getting involved, in my time, in terms of my area of expertise, which is learning and development, I've been invited as a panel member of the sector skills councils. In other words, I've been directly involved in setting the standards for the industry. So you have a voice. So not only, not only do you need to know who your sector skills council is, but you might have an opportunity to form part of the panel and be part of the development and implementation of standards within your sector skill council. If you don't want to do that, it's really nice to know and understand what your relevant skills sector skills council is and what standards they're working to, and are they current, and are they meeting the needs of your particular sector. Next one. Do you know what regulated framework are you working with? Are you working with the UK? Is it another international framework? Are you working with the Bahrain qualifications framework? So you need to know what framework you're working with. Remember, the framework articulates the standards that you must meet. So if you understand what framework and you understand the standards you're working to, it makes your life easier when your inspection comes about. Next. You need to know which awarding organization. Which awarding organization am I registering? Am I certificating with? And what are their specific requirements? Awarding organizations, because they work directly under the umbrella of Ofqual, obviously have a similar approach to conducting their business. But each awarding organization have slight nuances, slight differences in what they do and how they do it. So who is your awarding organization and how do you meet their requirements? Next. Who is your internal quality assurer? If it's a DVR, who is the DVR team? Who is on the panel? Not only get to know them, remember that they're there, yes, primarily to inspect, to audit, to quality assure, but also they're there to support, guide, and advise as well. And it's really good if you can have a relationship, a professional and independent relationship with your EQA. EQAs for the centers that I work with in the Kingdom of Bahrain, we know well, and we've got a good knowledge and understanding and working relationship. And again, when we were going through the DVR, we made contact with the DVR team well prior to the inspection to understand who they were and what their expectations they were. And it's building that professional relationship with them. Next. Do you have a robust quality management system? So that quality management system, your policy, your processes, your procedures, and your people, and that triangulation, does it all fit? Is it fit for purpose? And does it meet the regulated requirements? Next. Do you have a focus on continuous improvement? One of the things that any auditing or inspecting agency will be looking for is demonstrating a commitment to excellence. Yes, we finished that program. Yes, people were certificated. Yes, we did a good job. But how can we do better? What can we do? And Ray will talk about things that you can do in terms of continuous improvement. Simple things like just at the end of a module, at the end of a unit, or the end of a qualification, or the end of the program, just sitting down with your team and asking what went well, what didn't go so well, how can we improve for the future? And I've said this before, this is the key one, policies and procedures to meet your awarding organization requirements. The way that I did it with my team when we were preparing, I'm a big fan of Post-it notes. What I did is I put the overarching standard that they were looking for, and then what I did is I put Post-it notes to say, what did we have in place? Now, is that valid? Is it reliable? Is it sufficient to meet that standard? And it's a great way of visually displaying what the requirements are, but more importantly, what your policies and procedures are to meet the requirements. And I think the last point I put on there is, do you have sufficient qualified and competent staff? Remember, competence is important. They might be experienced, They might be qualified, but are they competent? So those are the key questions that I initially would be asking myself. And Ray's going to go into that in more detail shortly, and he's going to look at what we do pre, what we do during, and what we do post. But sort of as a big picture focus, these are the key questions that I would be looking to ask and understand to ensure that my inspection goes well. Now, there's a lot of effort going into this. You've got a lot to do. And those of you, some of you have said in Bahrain or internationally, you've had audits, you've had inspections before. It's quite a stressful time. It's quite demanding. And the standards are very high. So what are the benefits? So the last thing I want to do before I hand over to Ray is talk about the benefits of being inspected and working with regulated qualifications. Where's my benefit slide? Is it the next one?
Andrew, I think it will be after the pool. We will run pool 3 to understand if you were received regulated inspection today, what would be your biggest area of concern? And this will help you to focus on that one. So rule number 3 and lunch. And here is the question that we would like you to answer. If you were received a regulated inspection today, what would be your biggest of concern? And you have 1 minute to answer all these questions. My process and procedures, having the right people to deliver access, quality, and assure. Everything. Nothing of. Could you please answer the question? We need you to respond to the pool number 3 to understand where are you standing now? What are your main concerns? So Mr. Andrew can help you better. Andrew is here to help you to meet the requirement for the inspection and inspire you in this thing. So anyway, we have 22 people answer the question. We'll end up the pool now and share the result, and would like to ask Mr. Andrew to comment on that. Here is the result, Mr. Andrew. 22 people answered the question.
Shakir, if I can talk about that, I know that there's only 50% responded,
Raymond,
but it gives a reasonable snapshot of where we're at. In terms of your current policies, there are links I provided in the notes at the start, which you can use to websites, and I've provided the full web link because I didn't want to hyperlink it with an abridged version, and it didn't work, so at least you can copy and paste it. And there's one there called the Joint Council for Qualifications, which is all the UK awarding organisations have signed up to a common approach. In there is all your policies and procedures. I'd also add there, in terms of your policies, your external quality assurers and your awarding organisation have got a responsibility to make sure that you're up to speed on that. And they will have links where you can get those from. For my colleagues who are from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and schools, the sort of exam question I would say to you to take away is to look who your regulatory authorities are and find out where the web links are to the handbooks. Within the notes that I've given, there's a link to the BQA handbook page, and it's really good. You know, credit where credit's due. There's a wide range of handbooks in there, from schools the vocational area, and that's useful. So your policies are there, and your internal quality assurer should be managing those policies. Process and procedures that can fall out from that, and you can do that by what's called standardization meetings, getting your team together and getting your team working, which again I suppose links on to the concerns there, having the right people to deliver, assess, quality assure. If you take ownership of that internally and develop your staff and only use people external with expertise, and select the right external people to come in and assist you, the ones who are prepared to develop your staff, not just take your money and go, then you've got the basis of an organisation who are trained, who can actually flow into your processes and procedures and improve it. And if you've got everything, don't worry. Now, I know that some of organisations on here, some training institutes, are in the employability skills programme with City and Guilds. And you are what's known as a sub-centre, a satellite centre, it's my understanding. Within those handouts I've provided, if you look at the City and Guilds centre requirements, page 12, the bottom paragraph about the requirements of sub-centres, and equally importantly, the Joint Council for Qualifications, which is a regulatory document, requirement number 3.1 is that if a centre has sub-centres, they have a responsibility to train and develop their sub-centres. So if you're struggling with everything or struggling with an area, don't bring an external consultant in initially. Go to the parent approved centre who have a responsibility to support you, and you'll find it should be cost neutral. And the one person who knows nothing, your organisation meets all the requirements. Well done on that. Andrew, anything from you? No. Okay.
I wonder why you said that about that.
Dr. Shakir.
Yes. We'll go back to our presentation with Mr. Raymond. Sorry, with Andrew. Andrew, please continue.
Yeah. So, as I said before, and thank you for completing the poll. As Shaka said, it's good to know, who we've got, so therefore we can, tailor the presentation to meet the needs of the audience. But we will be having an open forum at the end, guys, and you've got, people with real experience in going through inspections internationally and nationally. So please, save your questions to the end, and we'll be pleased to help and support you. But as I said before, going through an inspection, be it a national or an international inspection or audit, it can be quite demanding, and therefore it can be quite stressful. So what are the benefits of regulated qualification? So if you go down this road, you get all the policies and the procedures, and you develop people, you've got a competent workforce, you're giving all your learners regulated qualification, your awarding organization is happy with you. It's an awful lot of effort and work. So what are the benefits to you, to your organization, to your learners? First and foremost, the first benefit obviously is, Shaka, when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It ensures consistent and regulated standards. Remember before, that's why I showed you the structure. If your learners are achieving certification, you can be guaranteed that it's regulated and it's consistent. Next, please, Shaka. High level of quality assurance. You've got your internal quality assurance. You've got your external quality assurer looking at your approved centre. You've got the awarding organisation making sure the external quality assurer is doing a good job, and you've got Ofqual making sure that the awarding organisation is doing a good job. So it's a high level of quality assurance. If your learners are achieving, you can be sure that they are competent. They are demonstrating the requisite knowledge, skills and qualities relevant to the standards that you're working towards. Next. It delivers internationally or nationally recognized qualifications, and so they are truly transferable as well. Next. Confidence to your sector of industry, whatever sector of industry you're working with. If you're working with regulated qualifications and you're meeting the standards, it says something about you, your institute, your approved center, your learners. These guys are working to international or national standards in a regulated framework. It gives us confidence, not only in you and your institute, but the learners that you're qualifying and certificating as well. Next, legal and moral responsibility. Legally, I mean, in the UK, there's been examples, and I'm sure some of you may have heard of it. I know some of you have lived and worked in the UK, but legally, some centres, they've taken government money, they haven't spent it properly or appropriately. So legally, there's a responsibility, but morally, you know, to your centre, to your employees, to your learners, to your sector of industry, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to move with regulated qualifications, okay, that are internationally recognised, that have high levels of quality assurance. It provides you and employers with records of competencies. Are the people working in that sector to that standard, are they demonstrating competence? Do they have the right level of knowledge, skills, and qualities to do their job properly? And last but not least, I think it ensures training is meaningful and relevant. If you're working to set standards that your sector of industry have sat down and devised, put into a regulated framework, and then they're registered and certificated with an organization, what you're doing is helping your learners, is helping your team be better at their job. So therefore, your training becomes meaningful and relevant. So there you go, just a quick introduction to why we have inspections. What I've done is I've looked at what a regulated qualification is. I've looked at the structure and framework that fits within. I've given you some high-level questions that you need to think about, but more importantly, why should you go through that heartache? Why should you go through that demanding and sometimes quite stressful process? Because there are significant benefits to you, your organization, your learners, and your team. And I now hand over to Ray, who will talk in more depth about how to prepare for an inspection.
Before we go to Raymond, we'd like to thank you, Andrew, for this really wide aspect of how this inspection and quality assurance systems goes. You remind me with my friend. I mean, I have a French friend. He studied for 5 years in Japan about the Aikido. So he have been practicing every day about the Aikido and how to do it, what to do, different skills. And after that, he went back to France, and he didn't understand Japanese, you know. So he was just imitating what they do and reflecting what they do. After that, I met him after about 10 years. That's been 5 years after he left Japan. He said, you know what? I spent 5 years of practicing Aikido without understanding why and how and what for I'm doing that. So I really, Mr. Andrew, thank you very much for this clear and wide picture that you give us about how these qualifications come, why they need to be regulated, how the inspection help people to improve their product or their process, what different components and ingredients should be added to this beautiful dish. So you really, I believe that so many of us, we have been forced by the Bahrain Quality Assurance to do some kind of procedures. We didn't understand very well why and how to do it and what benefits will bring to us. We were doing it just because the regulator asking us to do. But you explained to us now, Mr. Raymond, Mr. Andrew, is that we are not doing it for the BQA. We are doing it for our own benefit and for our client benefits also. Thank you very much, Raymond, and I will take the mic to Unless if you want to comment anything before we leave, Mr. Andrew.
No, thank you, Shop.
Okay, thank you for that, Andrew. And I'm going to talk about a phased approach to managing regulatory inspections based on my experience as of being an external quality assurer and an auditor. Turn that down. Oh, I'm going to keep that. What I'll add first of all is that if you as an institute, whether it's a school or whatever, are just living from inspection to inspection, you've got your quality assurance wrong. It should be embedded and it should be your daily routine, and you should have an accountable person who manages it on behalf of the owner and reports back. And there's a platform for getting across messages on quality assurance, which is meetings. You may well call them committee meetings, but they are ongoing. They are not formed purely for an inspection. They are part of the ongoing quality assurance and development of a centre. In awarding organisation terms, they call them standardisation meetings, where you're developing the delivery, assessment and verification of a qualification. A lot of centres lump it into a quality meeting, quality committee, where they talk about a number of areas, so they're not having meetings for meetings. So whilst I'm going to go on to how to a phased approach for preparing for an inspection, the little caveat is it should be daily routine. And if you're in the business of just preparing for an inspection and then forgetting about it, from my experience and having audited many centres, your centres will struggle to survive in a competitive world. And also, Andrew's talked about the external quality assurer. Within BQA, within the government frameworks, it's called a lead reviewer. All right. There's a commonality between inspections, external quality assurance visits, awarding organisations, and the centre. And that commonality is you want your learners to have quality training, whatever the subject is, that is quality assured. And that's not unreasonable. And that's common across the awarding organisations, the government bodies, and it should be the centre. And if someone's not doing it within that three-way thing, there's an issue. So on to the inspections. As I said, the lead reviewer, the external quality assurer. The external quality assurer may well actually just deal with a subject area, whereas a lead reviewer for a government organisation will be the lead reviewer and have a number of reviewers. They are your critical friend. They're not the enemy. Certainly when I used to go into organisations and they heard that I was serving in the army, they used to get quite uptight about it, thinking I'd come with 2 armed guards on their establishment and seal it off and, and go through it with, men with the weapons. But far from that. We're there to support centres develop, because that commonality is making sure that the learner gets a quality training and quality learning. But when it's coming up to the inspection, I put it into 3 distinct areas: pre-inspection, the inspection, the post-inspection. If we go to the next slide, please, Shakia. And what transcends those three phases is your policies, your process, your procedures, and your people. So what some awarding organisations do is a self-assessment. If they don't do it, for example, one awarding organisation I worked with in the Kingdom didn't do a self-assessment. I did it myself and sent it to them. And I think the person who actually audited me is on this workshop this morning. The DVR, the government, will send you a self-evaluation form. It's in the handbook, and get you to look at yourself. I think this is an absolutely outstanding tool for developing a centres. And it gets you to review your policies, review your processes and your procedures, review your team, review your learners. Are you giving them the right support? And the support that you got, in other words, your people. What I've also invoked, and I'll talk about it more as a way of taking ownership of a centre of quality assurance is a red team concept of testing it. There will be a single point of contact between the awarding organisation and the DVR. Normally, it's the most senior person. That's down to whoever the centre decides. Now, I know some centres will bring an external consultant in to do that. I don't necessarily agree with that, because you need to take ownership of yourself, and certainly in organisations that I've worked with, is that the single point of contact, you know, if I've been asked to come in, will be someone from the centre. I will be mentoring, if I'm an external consultant, and developing that person, because otherwise there is that reliance that becomes on the person as an external. And if it's your centre, you need to develop your staff, and that includes the peer person who's a single point of contact, because they may still be in the formative stages of understanding all the requirements of quality assurance. Look at your staff development. Is it fit for purpose? Have you done any? And if staff aren't performing, look at performance improvement plans. So you will get warned off that you're being audited or inspected. If it's from an awarding organisation, you normally get it about 6 weeks in advance. You roughly know when it will be, because it's annually or every 6 months, depending on what the risk is. And it's from the government. I think they give you 3 months. So it comes to the inspection. Next slide, please. So you lead reviewer, an external quality assurer, depending which organisation. My advice is be honest, be transparent with them. If you've done on the pre-inspection stage a self-assessment, which is it's a checkpoint of where you're at as a centre, you've identified areas for development, you've told them that you know what's going on, so be transparent with them. So if you found flaws, if you find areas for development, and indeed good practice, let them know, and let them know what journey you're going on to improve it. So updated policies, process procedures, your people, i.e. your staff, your learners. I've added stakeholders in there who are actually a key part, and it's a key part of the requirement for the DVR, for the government, the BQA audit. And are the stakeholders that are involved? In other words, are they getting a return of their investment? Now, what I recommend is what's called a tripartite agreement. In other words, there's, within a centre, you have your learner, you have your stakeholder, and you have your training institute. And generally, based on my experience, if something goes wrong, one of those components have failed in whatever area. And if you have that honest dialogue with stakeholders, learners, and the centre and its staff, you can normally get a root cause. So if, for example, a stakeholder is sending someone on a programme and they're giving them time out once a day to do it, but they're finding out that they're getting emails, this person endlessly, and they can't actually learn, the stakeholder has to take the hit on that and acknowledge that they've not supported the learner. So you can identify a root cause, and it's a good professional relationship, and it worked really well. And I could cite some examples for those who want it. I'd obviously get permission from the stakeholders first of all, where you could give them a ring and have a chat about the benefits of having a three-way agreement between those areas. Compliance with health and safety and compliance for data protection. I mentioned this not because it's a major issue, because it was an area that I had to address with the DVR on this exceptional circumstances, because in the instructions for the DVR on the exceptional circumstances, it stated that the inspection team have the right to cease training if there's any health and safety issues. Quite rightly. Because health and safety is enshrined in law, not only in the UK, but in Bahrain. How do you manage health and safety in a virtual environment? Well, there's mechanisms for doing that, but if you've got 30 learners on an online programme, you can't send someone round to their own houses to check on their health and safety. It's not very practical. So we insisted that everyone did some form of health and safety induction, and there was monitoring going on. And that includes visitors and contractors. That law is applicable, unless it states otherwise, to actually face-to-face or virtual. And there was a little bit of a, I won't say shock, a little bit of concern that we were insisting that any of the auditors, the reviewers who came into the virtual classrooms had to follow our policies. And the other one was compliance with data protection. GDPR in Europe and the UK, data protection laws. We were informed that unfettered access will be required to all data of all learners and all systems. There is an issue with that if you are an organisation that's also regulated by a awarding organisation, because within the enshrined within their regulations is you only provide data if you got the permission of the learner, and from the onset you actually inform the learner that the awarding organisation may wish to access it. In Bahrain, it's quite simple. You can just amend your instructions to your learners that if there's a government audit, they may wish to access your data. In terms of unfettered access and unrestricted access, if it was UK, that would cause a serious issue. So you need to get the complexities of the national regulations worked out. And because if your data is compromised, you are compromised. And I will give you an example of that, a personal example from that. I had life insurance with my in the military that covered me because of the nature of my work, and I got a letter from the insurance company which said, "We're really sorry, but your data has been compromised. But don't worry about it, because it's only your name, your address, it's where you live, and it's got your email address as well. But so that's all they've got." Totally missed the point. I'd entrusted them in my data. They're not protected it. More importantly, that organisation just dealt with military people. So my information, was compromised. People knowing I was in the military, which wasn't something I really wanted. And there are companies in the UK who will act on your behalf for compensation. And they did. And I got some compensation for that. I know the nuances within perhaps the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Bahrain may be difficult. What I'm emphasising there, you've still got to comply with data protection. And there are workarounds with that. So it's asked the question straight away. So that's, the construct of the inspection. They're critical friends. They'll come in, they'll go through everything. If you've done your preparation, ongoing as a centre, and before the inspection will be fine. Post-inspection, though, it doesn't stop there. Next slide, please. You get your team together as a team and you act on feedback. Now, Andrew talked about the importance of learning and the development. One of the hard and fast areas that Andrew used in terms of feedback, and it happens on everything we do, and it'll happen today once we finish this session. What did we do well, and what do we need to do better? Simple. You don't need an extended evaluation form. You ask your team that. Then go through the feedback from the inspection team or from the external quality assurance. If you need to, review your policy, update it, review your processes, review your people. If they're not delivering, you've got to do something about it. Likewise, if they are delivering, you've got to reward that. So develop your team. And again, you may well bring external expertise in, but try and do it yourself. If you haven't got their expertise, the person who comes in, who you decide to bring in, it's under the caveat that they're working to develop the team. Use reflective and developmental feedback, and I'll go through a method which I use very shortly, which is really effective, and I've tried that in the Kingdom of Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and it could be applicable to my friends who are from schools to be used in your workplace as well. So that's the three phases: the pre-inspection, the inspection, the post-inspection. But as I mentioned, it should be a daily routine quality assurance, and this should be one part of the process. Please don't just wait for the inspection to happen before you start thinking about all things quality assurance. Next slide, please. So I talked about red teaming. I'm going to fly through this. Once I've explained it, if you want more detail on it, because I'm not going to do it justice that the time deserves, just email me on the notes. There's my email address, and I can expand on it with you, whether it's a WhatsApp call or a Zoom call or just an email. Now, what is red teaming and learning development? Now, for those who work in IT, I know Dr. Shakir does, you'll know all about cybersecurity. The word red teaming will be familiar to this. It's a military testing. What I've designed is appropriate for learning and development that tests your policies, your process, and your procedures, and your people components in an approved centre. Now, I'm old enough to know where red teaming originated for. In 1981, and then some of you will say I wasn't even born then, Ray. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for making me feel old. Red team was used in Germany. I served in Germany for 15 years. And when we were told we were going to be red teamed, it meant that people were going to come in and test our military procedures, our military policies, and try and probe us. Now, if I was based in Germany in 1980, 1981, the red team was perhaps the Red Army, the Russians. So that's where I believe the red team concept came from, the name. The blue team is what's known as the friendly forces. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Next slide. Oh, sorry, scenario based. It's a number of scenarios which will test your organization to do with your policies, your process, procedures, and your people, from recognition of prior learning to a complaint to safeguarding, etc. Next one. Next slide. Test all components of your centre. Include your quality assurance staff. Next one. It's a vital component of centre development, and it gives the chief executive of a centre a snapshot of where his complete team are at. Next one. Used as a tool for continuing professional development. It goes in everyone's record, so that's good. Next one. So 2 areas, the red team. You know, what comprises of it? It must be experienced practitioners. It must be people who are independent from your organisation. Now, you don't have to bring an external experienced practitioner in. It may well and have to pay handsomely for it. You may well have a partnership with another centre. So one centre can red team the other centre and vice versa, as long as you stepped out of it. So and the reason it should be independent from the blue team, in other words, your centre staff, is there's no unconscious bias there. You're doing a genuine test, and it will test the policies, process, and procedures. It's in simulated scenarios, it's time bound, and it's development, but it is robust. It will go in there and ask questions, so you've got to come up with the answers. So you're preparing yourself fully, you know, for your DVR, external quality assurance inspection. Blue team, centre staff. You respond to situations and scenarios. You self-reflect as a tool for learning. Test your knowledge of policies, processes, and procedures, and where your shortfalls are. So again, it's that tool for development as a centre and as an individual. And it provides evidence of standardisation and CPD. You've gone through some process. You shouldn't be doing this just before you're inspected. It should be as part of your ongoing centre development. And if you're a new centre, I would recommend you do it straight away, because you can get your performance improvement plans in place for your staff if they need developing. So that's the concept. I've used it in the UK. I've used it in Bahrain. It works well. It puts your blue team, your centre staff under pressure, and it's meant to, because you're actually challenging their knowledge, their experience. But in the right way, because if we're focusing on that commonality, that the learner is the most important person in this, you need staff and you need a centre who've got traction in developing that commonality. So that's the red team. Now, for those who want to expand on that more, you can please do ask questions at the end. If you want to email me, you can do. I'm over in Bahrain, and if I'm allowed enough time in my program from Dr. Shakir, I'll come and do it, and I won't charge anything for it because it's a good concept for it, and I'll come for 2 or 3 hours to take your team through it. Okay, next slide, please. And that's every good presentation has a little quote from someone famous. He's not doing too popular at the moment. I read up after Elon Musk that he's charging extortionate prices for batteries, and I read a news report that someone blew up their Tesla in protest of it. But it's a nice quote. Next slide, please. And finally, feedback. You know, every quality assurer, everyone in training, you know, regardless of schools, right through the spectrum, we'll say feedback's important. You know, from my experience, there's various types of feedback. Use what's best for you. This is me that I'm just putting out there, which I use and I've developed and I've used in Bahrain. And it's developmental feedback, which is a mixture of coaching feedback and formal feedback. And I called it the arrow method. Why? Because it's simple to remember. And certainly some of the assessors I trained in Bahrain are using it at EWA and at BATCO. So what is it? It's a simple construct. If you're giving feedback, tell the person receiving the feedback what the aim of the feedback is and what the desired outcome is. Next slide. Reflection. In this component of the feedback, you allow the recipient to reflect upon the situation that feedback is being given. You know, there's a saying that people are their own worst critics. Well, let people, you know, feedback and let them know where they think they did well or they didn't do well. Next one. Reality. Once the recipient has self-reflected, the feedback giver presents some facts that the recipient may be unaware of. And there's a good guy called, there's a good tool called Johari's window, which talks about, you know, people don't know, but others see it. And this is the person giving the feedback is letting the person who's getting the feedback know what they've seen, the facts. Next one. The O is the opportunities. In this component of the feedback, the deliverer and receiver of the feedback discuss opportunities to improve or share best practice. And the final one, what next? The final stage of the arrow feedback model is decided what will happen. This should include SMART objectives or time-bound records of decision. And that is, you know, what's the point of giving feedback if you don't have any outcome of it? If it's a recorded decision. Now, when I'm teaching assessors and quality assurers, I use this model and trainers because it gives them a process to follow for delivering feedback, which is easy to remember. So that's me. Thank you for your time. We've got questions at the end. And as I say, if you know, post the questions if you want to email me or indeed Andrew. Our email addresses are there. Dr. Shakir, back to you to hand over to our guest speaker.
Well, thank you, Raymond. Again, I think you clarify further what already Andrew explained about the procedure, policy, and the people. And I also encourage everybody to take this opportunity and book Mr. Raymond, who is coming to Bahrain by next month, almost next week, for a health checkup. So he will do a health checkup to know how your center is ready for the inspection. And he will do this, fortunately, for free. So if I were you, I will take advantage of that. I know how much this costs because we did this. We hired somebody to give us a health checkup. They did it for in 2 days. Raymond is promising only until now for 1 day. I don't know if he will accomplish in 1 day what they accomplish in 2 days, but I believe he could. And the second thing, he will introduce the center to the RED team concept, where if you have another, especially another training center that might cooperate with you, you can work as one center as a red team and the other center as a blue team, and you can check on each other. I know some institute or some even schools, they have more than one branch. So one branch can work as the blue team and the other branch can work as the red team. So anyway, in all means, I would really advise you, recommend and highly encourage you to book a meeting or a schedule with Mr. Raymond. Mr. Raymond and Andrew, they are both partners in resilience consultancy, and they provide their services in quality assurance, and they know about the British standards, especially about the employability skills, more than anybody else here in Bahrain. And I will again recommend you, encourage you, and advise you to take advantage of Raymond visit next week. Of course, Raymond will be in contact with Andrew, and he will use all what Andrew explained to you, and we can arrange also for a face-to-face webinar regarding that. Thank you very much. I will move now to Masooma. Masooma, could you please take the mic and go ahead?
Thank you. Good morning again. It's almost good afternoon. I have introduced myself before, but just a quick introduction. I used to work in the BQA between 2008 to 2019, and from 2019 onward, I became a freelancer. I provide consultancy and training. Next, please. Mr. Andrew and Mr. Raymond, they covered everything very extensively. So what I would be given is just a list of effective tips that would help you throughout the process. And it's sort of a summary of what you just heard from my colleagues. Next.
Sorry.
So the first step is the preparation before you start. You should make the decision of whether you'll do it internally or you're going to hire a consultant. As my colleagues mentioned earlier, you either have it 100% based on your expertise and staff, or you can have a consultant. I would have the same opinion of my colleagues that when you hire a consultant, it's not a good practice to do it 100% for you, but it's better to have him helping you to understand and work it out with you in order for you and your staff to learn. So in order to do this, you need to assign people from your side to learn and be part of the whole process. And in all cases, you need to download all the inspection handbooks, forms, policies, procedures, make them available to all your staff and trainers. And before you start doing anything, you should email the inspection or the review entity to ask for any updates, because sometimes the updating in the systems, they take time. But when you email them, they'll be more than happy to support you and give you all the documentations or direct you to the right place to get this information. Next, please. The second thing is the committee selection. I always say that it's better to be a committee than a one-man show. It's not desirable to have one person running the whole inspection process, but it's always a very effective thing to have a committee. And a good thing to have is to maintain a reasonable diversity. For example, a head of department or different heads of departments, an officer, a specialist, maybe you need an IT, maybe you need an admin. So you need to maintain a reasonable diversity within the committee that you're forming. You should be able to involve other staff members as required. For example, you will involve the trainers when it comes to teaching and assessment. You will involve the managers when it comes to managerial and futuristic aspects. For instance, next please. The third thing is to develop a side list. Always have side lists for like summarizing things. I know you have like meeting minutes or you have a procedure to document things, but when you have clear side lists, you'll be able to grab them and you'll be able to focus on specific things. Like when you have a list for your strength, a list for your areas for improvement, things you need to change or improve before the next committee meeting. Sometimes you've got the practices, but they're not
integrating each other. We are not just to make review and
دكتور عباس ما ادري انت تتكلم ويانا ولا بالغلط.
Okay.
استاذة معصومة, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. The fourth list can be for the things you want to improve or change before the inspection. Sometimes the institute is doing certain practices that they don't want to keep going with doing them. So you can have like a list of things that you want to improve or change, or things you want to add to the things you're already doing. And the last list can be for the policies, procedures to improve, amend, or create, because sometimes you don't have policies for certain things, but throughout the analysis process that you're doing, you figure out that you don't have a policy relevant to this or relevant to that, or you need to expand. Especially now with the COVID thing, a lot of policies and procedures have been amended based on the circumstances. Next, please. Now, this point is about having a thorough analysis of what you are doing, what you have, and I always recommend that the committee should be offered a special time out to conduct a thorough analysis. A lot of things needs a little focus. Just little focus will help you to learn and to reflect on your practices. When you're overwhelmed with a lot of things, you're doing 3, 4, 5 tasks at a time, sometimes you miss some little points that you're doing so good, but you're not able to reflect because you were overwhelmed with a lot of things in your mind. So I always recommend that the committee conducting the self-evaluation or doing the brainstorming around the inspection system would have a time out to be more in focus on the task. I also recommend that they check the recommended essential evidence. Some of them do not apply on you. And if they don't apply, then you would think why. You would clarify to yourself why they don't apply. So when you get to the inspection point and you get to be asked, can you provide this evidence? You have a justification and you've been through this and you know why you don't have this. Because, for instance, it doesn't apply on you. And if you have something that is required and you don't have it, then you would assign specific people to deal with all these shortcomings. And it's also this is a very important practice to do, is that you have someone to read the document and someone to quality assure the whole system, be it the senior manager or anybody assigned by the management, internally or externally. Next. Another good practice of the thorough analysis that you're doing is to benchmark your practices with other people, with other institutes. Similar size, similar specialization, different grades, other competitors in Bahrain, regionally and internationally. It's a really good practice to benchmark what you have, what you're doing with others. And now the social media and the websites, they're very rich, and you would find loads of information from other institutes that you can benchmark your practices with. Next, please. Now, these are simple tips to remember throughout the whole process, throughout the whole time, not just because you're having an inspection coming. Always keep your records and data ready all the time and make it one of your top priorities. Health and safety matters are really, really very important, even if it's not highlighted strongly, but it makes a huge difference when an inspector comes or hears something which is not good about one of the institutes. It makes a huge difference. You should have a contingency plan, plan B, risk assessment, whatever you will call it, but you can't just go with one single plan because like now what happens with the COVID, no one was 100% ready, but a lot of institutes were like 50 or 70% ready, and they have the basic things that they can step on and fly. Another step is to observe lessons and observe practices. Work with your team on self-reflection all the time. This is very important. Be critical, be reflective. Always observe things keep your eye on your courses, on your practices, on your policies, procedures, well, any updates in the market that you're always like, can we do this? Why can't we do that? Why? When you have this self-reflection, it's much easier for you to conduct an inspection later, because you're doing what the inspectors are coming to do. They're trying to like close the loop of what is going on. Is it effective or not? How can we improve that? If you're doing it internally, then that's not going to take a big effort from you when the inspectors come. And remember, every organization has a unique nature. Unless you explain it thoroughly to the inspection team and you highlight your good practices and strengths, they're not going to know about it. So you have to explain it thoroughly. And remember that even the most perfect institute, they do receive recommendations. That's part of the system. So don't be like, I got 2 recommendations about this. You will have it as much as other people would have it. The quality of wordings is the thing that makes the difference. Next, please. Finally, remember, new evidence will be triangulated with other received information. So if you bring an evidence supporting any of what you're saying, it has to be linked to other things. It has to be reflected in your self-reflection, reports, meeting, interviews, let's say the lessons observed, any outcome, any practice, anything that is going on has to be at least. Sometimes when we get an evidence, we need to triangulate it from different people. So we would ask the manager, we would ask the senior and the junior staff. We will try to triangulate it. Otherwise, these new evidence will not be taken into account because they're not linked to anything. So that doesn't make a difference. And 3 last tips that I always give: stay calm throughout the whole process. Don't panic, don't overreact. Always discuss, don't be defensive. Listen, prove your point of view, and remember, you're in control. Until the last part of the process, you're in control. You can justify every single word you're saying. You can clarify, you can explain, you can provide evidence. Throughout the whole process, you're in control up to the last point of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Masooma, very much. I really appreciate your attendance here and being with us. I believe everybody will benefit from your presentation and from your hint, and hopefully you can cooperate with them later on. Just Raymond, remind me now that he already sent in the chat his email address. So anybody who is really willing to book for Raymond and his next visit, he can send a direct email to Raymond for that. Okay, and you can, if you would like, you can contact ProCloud Center team, and they will book for you also if you like to. I think that's it for today. I appreciate your attendance. And before we go, I think there will be one last poll. I hope that you can answer this poll to know what's going on. Sorry. What is the pool here?
Because you know them, and these are all new people.
Is there any questions from anyone whilst that poll's coming up?
What you could say.
Any observations?
Okay, so we will pass the pool, and I will, as Raymond asked, if you have any questions, it is time to ask direct question to Raymond, Andrew, and Masooma. Please, when you want to ask your question, raise your hand, or you can pick up the phone and ask the question, but please state to whom you are asking this question if you would like a specific person to answer. Please go ahead. We have Manal. Manal, please.
Yes, good morning, all.
Good morning, Manal.
Good morning, all. I'm from Kuwait. I'm a freelancer, and I'm really interested in that presentation. But really now I know the benefit and the good side of that tool, but still till now I don't recognize, I don't understand very well what's the mean and what is the benefit. You tell us just the benefit and how we use it and what is the side effect, all of that. But what is the details of using that tools, why we use it at the freelancer, why you tell us many things, but how we use it, what is it meaningful? I don't know exactly. Now you tell a lot of things, and what is the weapon, what is the tool, I don't know till now. I don't know, maybe I miss a lot of things because I'm here still in my work. Okay, but I really follow you and focus, but still I not understand. I don't know why. And from the beginning, I tell you, I'm interested in education field, and I am in the government sector also in a training center. Okay, and I am freelancer. Both of that, but still I'm not understanding. This is the first time I hear about that tool. So I don't know, maybe from my side, my mistake, or I don't know why you're not interesting in Kuwait.
There are no wrong or right, Manal. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. But if you would like to ask specific, are you asking what are the tools used for inspection? Am I understanding your question right? Or the question is that how you may use what you presented here today in your education inspection? What is your exactly question?
My exactly questions is that when you explain now the tools that the inspection, okay, you explain the benefit and how we can use it in a good way, but how we use it شلونك اشرحها. انت الحين شرحت وايد عن بالعربي جزاك الله خير. وانا خليني افهم بعد. انت الحين شرحت عن طريقه استخدامها والمميزات والحاله الافضل بالسيناريو لما نستخدم هذا التول، بس هو شنو طريقته؟ هل هو مثلا نظام الكتروني؟ هل هو مثلا تشيك ليست؟ هل هو مثلا طريقه معينه يستخدمها المدرب او يستخدمها مثلا اللي هو صاحب المعهد او اداره التدريب؟ كيف نستخدمها؟ شنو الاليه؟
لان الاخت منال انت لان في الكويت شويه صاير الاجواء عندك مختلفه. احنا عندنا for the last خلينا نقول 10 years في اللي هو البحرين كواليتي اشورنس، هم على قولتك introduce the system. هذا السيستم فيه هذا الكواليتي اشورنس حق الاديوكيشن سيكتور especially training and schools. They visit all the schools and conduct this inspection.
Okay.
وعندهم هم التولز اللي انت تسالين عنها. الحين المشكلة أن المعاهد والمدارس وحتى رياض الأطفال شلون تجهز نفسها حق هذه الزيارة. هني يجي دور اللي هو على قولتش الفريلانسر أو الكونسلتنت اللي هم يساعدوا المعاهد والمدارس حق أن يجهزوا نفسهم. الحين أنا بصراحة عشان أكون صادق وياك غير مطلع على تجربة الكويت في هذا المجال، متأكد أن عندهم تجربة في هذا الموضوع. الحين الإخوان ريموند وأندرو وبعد الأخت معصومة قاعدين يقولون أولاً ليش هذا النظام اللي مثلاً البحرين introduced 10 years ago is important، وشلون المعاهد والمدارس prepare themselves for that. الحين to answer your question, is it a checklist, is it computerized, is it whatever system? Yes, all above. كل الأشياء اللي انتي ذكرتينها موجودة في السيستم، وكل معهد يمكن introduce other tools، وكل consultants يمكن يستخدم مثل ما قلتين أدوات مختلفة. اللي أندرو وريموند وحتى الأخت معصومة قدموه اليوم مو تشيك ليست ولا سيستم ولا هذا، هو mainly يتكلمون عن الفريم وورك حق الموضوع. فهم يقول لك ان الفريم وورك هذا يحتاج ان انت تركز على 3 اشياء. لازم تكون عندك بوليسيز واضحه، وبعدين من هذه البوليسيز تشتق بروسيجرز. اوكي، وهذه البروسيجرز تكون متواكبه مع الستاندردز المحطوطه من الريجوليتر، يعني من المنظم حق الموضوع. وبعدين لازم يكون الطاقم اللي يشتغل عندك، يعني سواء كنت في القطاع الحكومي او في القطاع الخاص او حتى في الكونسلتنسي، يكون قادر ومتمكن من هذه الادوات اللي انت عرضتها اساسا في البروسيجرز او البوليسيز اللي انت عرضتها. اتمنى استاذه منال ان انا يعني الى حد ما جاوبت هاي الموضوع.
انا اسفه على الكلمه هذه، ولكن اللي قلته الحين هو يعني الزبده هني. انا فهمت كل شيء. المحاضره اللي قلتها ما شاء الله يعني
هو على قولتك انا هاي اللي فهمته انا بعد من الويبينار، يعني عشان اكون مباشر وياك. الشيء الثاني استاذه منال،
تفضل.
احنا ممكن نخليك تتواصلين مع الاخ ريموند او الاخت معصومه او الدكتور
اتشرف
لهذاك، وانتي تتناقشين وياهم عشان they answer your question in more specific way related to Kuwait idea. استاذه معصومه، ما ادري اذا في عندك اضافه تبغين تضيفينها بخصوص الكويت، اذا انت على اطلاع فيها او شيء.
انا ما عندي اطلاع عن الكويت للاسف، بس يعني just to summarize ان احنا كل المعلومات اللي انعطت اليوم عباره عن خلاصه الى خبرات مختلفه لاكسبوجر الى different frameworks طبقت على مختلف الكونتكست، يعني مثلا على مدارس، معاهد، جامعات في البحرين، برا البحرين. فهاي كأنها صايرة خلاصة، يعني هاي كأنها تقدرين تاخذينها مثل البيسك تيبس اللي تقدرين ان تحطينها في بالك لما انت بتسوين اي بتروحين على اي انسبكشن، سواء كان موجود في الكويت، حتى لما مثلا انتم تبغون مثلا شهادات تكون approved من international center او ان مثلا accreditation. بعد هاي things to keep in mind. They're not a checklist. They're not 1, 2, 3 you need to maintain. بس يعتمد على your own context. أنت شنو المركز اللي عندك؟ شنو المكان اللي قاعدة تحاولين تطورينه؟ شنو الهدف من هاي يعني البروسيس اللي قاعدة تسوينه؟ هاي مجرد tips وشغلات إحنا من خبرتنا قاعدين نحاول إن إحنا نغطيها بصورة عامة. يعني
هل هي مكتوبة أستاذة معصومة على أساس نطلع عليها؟
والله يعتمد يعني احنا مو كاتبينها بالضبط كهاند
شلون انا اعرفها؟ يعني شلون؟ هل هي مثل الفريم ورك؟ اوكي، شلون انتم تحددونه؟ مفروض مكتوب او اجنده او مثلا يعني ما ادري شلون، هل هي دستور معين؟ شنو بالضبط؟
يعتمد على انت شنو الهدف منها. يعني مثلا
انا شوفي، يعني الحين انا في مجال التدريب صار لي 20 سنه، ولكن أنا أعرف شنو الجيد وشنو الغير جيد، شهادة مثلا معتمدة غير معتمدة في إطار معين، ولكن أنا أتوقعت إنه يكون في ليفل معين، يكون ستاندرد مثلا عربيا عالميا، إني أنا مجرد إني أنا يعني مطلعة عليه أو عارفة هذا البروسيجر، بحيث إني أنا أعرف إني أنا on the right track.
أستاذة معصومة، اسمحي لي إن أنا أجاوب على السؤال. أستاذة منال، الكلام اللي تقولينه مهم جدا، وهاي مثلات ما قلت انا في القصه مالت صاحبنا اللي كان يتعلم كاراتيه في اليابان لمده 5 سنوات، او بالاصح ايكيدو. فيا الشيخه موجود على البحرين PQA ويب سايت، موجود الستاندردز باللغه العربيه وباللغه الانجليزيه، وطبعا فيه توجه عام موجود اللي هو يسمونه الجلف او الGCC فريم وورك. فهو موجود يا شيخة، بس احنا الحين يعني علشان بس ما يتحول اللقاء الى 1 to 1، مثل ما قلت لك استاذه منال، انت ممكن تتواصلين ويا ريموند مباشره او تتواصلين ويانا، واحنا بنكون اكثر من سعداء ان احنا نساعد. غير عن هذا يا شيخة، في برنامج موجود اساسا حق انه هو التدريب على الجوده. يعني شلون انت تصير اللي هو يسمونه internal verifier، اوكي، يعني خليني شنو نسميه محقق داخلي حق المعاهد، حق ان انت تكون تسوي الانسبكشن على موضوع جوده التدريب او جوده التعليم. وفي شهاده في الموضوع، وان شاء الله راح نتقدم او نقدمها في الايام القادمه. وفي شهاده عشان انت تكون اكسترنال، وفي ليفلات على هذه الشهاده. فالجواب على سؤالك استاذة منال ارجع واقول فيه يعني اطار، فيه تدريب، فيه ماتيريال. اضف الى ذلك استاذة منال ان عقب نهاية هذه الورشة راح يتم ارسال المحتوى مال هذه الورشة as PDF لكل الحضور اليوم ان شاء الله. والبرنامج هذا راح يكون مسجل ومعلق مرفوع على اليوتيوب، وممكن الاطلاع عليه حق ان الواحد يختار المقاطع اللي هو يشوف انه هو يستفيد منها اكثر. اوكي استاذة منال؟ اتمنى ان انا اكون جاوبتك. زين اخواني، في اي اسئله اخرى؟ في احد عنده سؤال ثاني؟ Is there anybody who would like to raise more questions to the participant today or to the speakers?
Shakir, can you hear me okay?
Yes, of course. We all hearing you.
All right, good. Andrew's had to leave because he's had to go on to another webinar, but it sends everyone his best wishes. I think I got the gist of what Manal was saying from Kuwait. I've actually been to Kuwait, Jeddah, a few years ago. Let me give you the background of these webinars, and I don't know if Dr. Shakir explained it. Is it came together because there was a need in the Kingdom of Bahrain and in Saudi Arabia. It's open. The speakers give their free time and bring their experience and try and party on each other. In terms of what we bring and what Masuma's brought today is we haven't shared notes beforehand. We've come in and we've delivered what we feel is right. Now, crossing over from that, there was that commonality because Masuma talked about reflection, the importance of reflection, and I talked about that. But we've come in, we've talked and based on our experience on what the inspectors look for across all inspectorates, be it government, be it awarding organisations. The tools that I told you about, which is the red team and the arrow method, is a tool which I've used and I've shared with you. You might not like it, that's okay, but I've shared it and I've passed it on. So I've not given you the answers. I've said this is one tool I've used. If you've got other tools you use as a freelance consultant, have a word with Dr. Shakir and come along to a webinar and pass that on, because we're all about imparting our knowledge and expertise for the benefit on a common approach to our learners, sharing best practice. What I believe is best practice, you might be able to surpass that. That's brilliant. I work in quality assurance and I accept that. So please, if you've got other ideas as a freelance consultant which you use, bring that along, share it with everyone, and we can all be better. And more importantly, our learners can be better for it. So, in terms of actually showing you how Red Team works, how our method works, I've offered pro bono to come along to centres and go through that. All right, and I'll do that. If that means a trip to Kuwait, I'm not sure I can venture across that on this trip, but hopefully sometime soon I could do that. Dr. Shakir, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ramon, for your explanation. Is there anybody who have any more questions? If no one have any question, we will close today's webinar by thanking all of you, and especially our distinguished speakers, Mr. Raymond and Andrew and Miss Masuma. Thank you very much, Raymond. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Masuma, and hope to see you soon in Bahrain. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.